Walk into an Orchard Road shopping mall right now. The lights are on, the stores are open, but look around. The shoppers are not there. Singapore welcomed 16.9 million tourists in 2025. That was a record. Tourism receipts hit a record 32.8 billion Singapore dollars. The world called it a comeback story. Travel influencers called it paradise. TikTok made it look like crazy rich Asians every single day. But in 2026, Prime Minister Lawrence Wong's government got a very different report. The Singapore Tourism Board is now forecasting that tourists will spend less money this year, even as more people arrive. A basic mid-range hotel runs $150 to $300 a night. A five-star room starts at $420 on weekends. Retail shop closures jumped 29% in just the first quarter of 2026. This is not the city TikTok sold you. And the numbers do not lie. Here is something that almost never happens in tourism. More people are coming, and yet the city is making less money. The Singapore Tourism Board told its industry partners in May 2026 that spending is expected to soften because of, and I'm quoting directly, muted demand in the months ahead. They forecast tourism receipts between 31 and 32.5 billion Singapore dollars for 2026. That is below the 32.8 billion record they just set in 2025. Think about what that means. Arrivals going up, revenue going down. The reason is simple. The tourists who are still coming are spending less. They are eating cheaper, skipping the high-end shopping, choosing shorter trips. The big budget visitors who used to flood Singapore's malls with shopping bags are changing their habits. And the budget travelers, the everyday tourists who spend 3 or 4 days exploring the city, buying gifts, eating at restaurants, many of them are not coming at all anymore. Early 2026 data tells the story. Indonesian tourist arrivals dropped 13.3%. Malaysian arrivals fell 14.7%. Vietnamese arrivals slipped from 393,000 in 2024 to just 344,000. These are Singapore's closest neighbors, and they are choosing to stay home or go somewhere else. Something is pushing them away, and it is not hard to find. Singapore is one of the most expensive cities on earth. That has always been true. But in 2026, the cost gap between Singapore and its neighbors grew wide enough to make everyday tourists stop and do the math. A budget traveler in Bangkok can find a clean, decent hotel for $30 to $50 a night. In Kuala Lumpur, $40 to $60. In Bali, $25 to $50. In Singapore, a budget option still costs $100 or more. A mid-range hotel runs between $150 and $300 a night. And if you want a 5-star experience at Marina Bay Sands, you're looking at $500 to $800 per night, minimum. Food costs tell the same story. A pint of beer at a Singapore bar costs between 15 and 20 Singapore dollars. A Singapore sling at the Raffles Hotel costs 39 Singapore dollars for one cocktail. Yes, hawker centers still offer cheap and excellent local food. But tourists do not just eat at hawker centers. They explore, they shop, they go out. And in Singapore, all of that adds up fast. Then there is the Singapore dollar. It is one of the strongest currencies in Southeast Asia. That means every dollar a tourist brings from Indonesia, Malaysia, India, or the Philippines buys less the moment they land. Travelers from these countries are not being cheap. The exchange rate is genuinely pushing them toward cheaper destinations. For many everyday tourists, Singapore went from a maybe to a no. Singapore has more shopping malls per square kilometer than almost anywhere in the world. For decades, retail shopping was one of the biggest reasons tourists came. Orchard Road was not just a street, it was a destination. In 2026, that reputation is being tested. Orchard Road's retail vacancy rate hit 7.1% in the first quarter of 2026. That is up from 6.6% just 3 months earlier. The downtown core shopping district saw vacancies climb to 6.3%. These numbers move slowly in real estate. A jump like this in just 1 quarter is not a blip. It is a signal. Shop closures are accelerating across the board. In the first quarter of 2026, retail closures jumped 29.2% compared to the same time last year. Restaurant and food business closures shot up an even sharper 42.8% year over year. Department stores are feeling it most. Japanese brand Isetan, which once had 6 locations across Singapore, has been quietly shutting its doors. It closed its Tampines outlet, then its next location. What was a 6-store chain is now down to its last 2 spots. Older malls like Holland Road Shopping Center, which opened in the early 1970s, have corridors that feel like a different era. Foot traffic has faded. Tenants are leaving. Landlords are cutting deals just to keep the lights on. The tourists who used to fill those aisles with shopping bags are spending less on retail, and the stores are feeling every dollar of that shift. Singapore does not exist in a bubble. It sits in the middle of Southeast Asia, surrounded by countries that are actively fighting for the same tourists and offering them a far better price. Thailand welcomed over 11.68 million international visitors in just the first 4 months of 2026. Bali in Indonesia remains one of the most searched beach destinations in the world. Vietnam is pulling in younger travelers with low costs, beautiful scenery, and a currency that makes every dollar feel like 2. Malaysia, right across the causeway from Singapore, offers similar urban experiences, similar food culture, and dramatically lower prices. The competition is not just about beaches and resorts. These countries have upgraded their airports, their hotel infrastructure, and their event calendars. Thailand is aggressively building its luxury and medical tourism sectors. Vietnam is investing in premium coastal resorts. Indonesia is positioning Bali as a world-class luxury destination alongside its budget offerings. What used to be a clear gap in quality between Singapore and its neighbors is closing fast. And the price gap is not closing at all. It is getting wider. For a middle-class family from Jakarta, Kuala Lumpur, or Chennai, the question is not complicated. Singapore costs 3 to 4 times more, and the reasons to pick it over a cheaper option are shrinking. Here's what the doom headlines get wrong. Singapore is not collapsing, not even close, but it is splitting in 2, and the top half of the split is doing very well. Changi Airport remains one of the greatest airports on Earth. It handles tens of millions of passengers every year and consistently ranks as the world's best. Its passenger traffic is strong, and Singapore's position as Asia's premier aviation hub is not going anywhere. Marina Bay Sands is still packed. The integrated resort, with its iconic rooftop pool and casino floors, pulls in high-spending visitors from across the globe. The luxury market is not the problem. Ultra-premium travel is holding firm. Business travel is booming. Singapore ranks 3rd in the world and 1st in Asia Pacific for hosting international conferences and conventions. In 2026 alone, Singapore hosted the first ever AAAI Artificial Intelligence Conference held outside the United States in its 40-year history. The Herbalife Extravaganza 2026 is expected to bring 25,000 corporate delegates. These events fill 5-star hotels, top restaurants, and premium venues at full price. The Formula One Singapore Grand Prix continues to sell out. Taylor Swift's Eras Tour made Singapore its only stop in Asia, and the entire region flew in for it. These blockbuster events drive enormous short-term spending from high-value visitors. Singapore's strategy of betting on luxury, events, and business travel is working at the very top. The problem is everything below that level. The story of Singapore's tourism in 2026 is a story of two cities. At the top, everything looks strong. Business travelers, luxury tourists, and corporate event delegates are spending freely. Five-star hotels are filling rooms. Casino floors are busy. The skyline views are still extraordinary. This segment of tourism is healthy. But below that top tier, a different reality is setting in. Mid-range hotels are feeling pressure. The tourists who filled them, families from Indonesia, couples from Malaysia, young travelers from Vietnam and the Philippines, are not coming the way they used to. The ones who do come are watching their spending closely. They are eating hawker center meals instead of restaurant dinners, skipping the boutique shops, staying fewer nights. The malls that were built to serve that middle segment are now sitting with empty units and falling foot traffic. Small restaurants, local tour operators, and neighborhood shops depend on that everyday tourist dollar. And that dollar is walking past Singapore and landing somewhere cheaper. This is not a collapse in the movie disaster sense. It is a slow structural shift. Singapore has bet on becoming an elite destination, and it is winning that bet at the top. But the businesses and workers in the middle of the economy are being left to figure out what comes next. So here is where Singapore stands in 2026. Tourism receipts are expected to fall below last year's record, even as more tourists arrive. Orchard Road has a retail vacancy rate of 7.1%. Shop closures are up nearly 30%. And key markets like Indonesia and Malaysia are sending far fewer visitors than before. At the same time, Changi Airport is humming. Marina Bay Sands is full of high rollers. Corporate conference halls are sold out. The luxury economy is alive. The question is not whether Singapore will survive. It will. It is one of the most resilient cities on earth. The question is who benefits when it does. If the city keeps moving up market, it will keep winning the five-star game. But the everyday vendors, the mid-tier hotels, the malls built for the average tourist, those businesses are running out of runway. Singapore is not dying. But the version of Singapore that was affordable and exciting for the everyday traveler, that version is quietly closing its doors. And most people will not notice until the malls are completely dark.